Emma sat at the tiny kitchen table of her one-bedroom apartment, staring at the wrinkled $5 bill in her hand. It was all she had left until her next paycheck. Being a nurse wasn't glamorous. Her shifts were long, her body exhausted, and her pay barely enough to cover rent. Yet she gave her all, always putting patients first, even if it meant skipping meals or walking home to save bus fare. Tonight was different. Her best friend had begged her to go on a blind date. "Just give it a chance, Emma. You never know," she'd insisted. Emma had laughed it off, but secretly, she longed for companionship, for someone who saw her beyond the scrubs and tired eyes. She walked into the cozy cafe, nerves fluttering in her chest. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, warm and comforting. She hesitated at the counter, then ordered a small latte, handing over her last $5. "At least I'll look like I belong here," she whispered to herself. Moments later, a tall man in a crisp suit walked in, glancing around until his eyes landed on her. His smile was warm, disarming, as he approached. "Emma?" he asked. Her heart skipped. This was her date? She expected someone ordinary, but he looked confident, successful, untouchable. She straightened her thrift store cardigan, wishing it didn't show its age. What Emma didn't know was that the man sitting across from her was not just another customer. He was the cafe's CEO, a man whose next decision could change her life in ways she never imagined. Emma tried to calm her nerves as Daniel, her date, pulled out a chair. He had an easy smile, but there was something commanding about him too, like he belonged in places she'd never step into. "So, Emma," he began, "what do you do?" Her cheeks warmed. "I'm a nurse. Pediatrics." His eyes softened. "That must be tough." "It's rewarding," she said quickly, though her voice carried the weariness of someone who had seen more than her share of suffering. She didn't mention the double shifts, the sleepless nights, or the bills piling on her counter. Daniel leaned forward. "And today? Long shift." She laughed lightly. "Every day is a long shift." Then, realizing how that sounded, she added, "But I wouldn't trade it. The kids need me." Something about her honesty struck him. Most people he met tried to impress him, but she was different, raw, unpolished, genuine. He noticed her hands, calloused with faint marks from gloves, and wondered how many lives those hands had held steady. When the waiter came, Daniel suggested ordering dinner. Emma panicked. She didn't have a cent left. "I'm not very hungry," she lied. But Daniel noticed the hesitation, the way she shifted in her seat. He didn't push, only ordered something for them to share. As they ate, Emma realized she was actually enjoying herself. He wasn't arrogant, wasn't trying to impress. He asked about her dreams, her patience, her favorite books. Still, in the back of her mind, a quiet fear echoed. "He's too good for me. If he knew how broke I was, he'd walk away." She didn't know he was thinking the exact opposite. "She's too good for me. If she knew I was the CEO, she might not see the real me at all." The cafe grew quieter as the night went on. Daniel suggested dessert, but Emma politely declined. She glanced at her empty cup, her last $5 gone, and wondered if this would be the first and last time she'd see him. As they prepared to leave, a waitress walked over nervously. "Excuse me, sir. We're out of the Colombian roast you requested earlier. Should I call the supplier?" Emma's brows furrowed. "Wait, you're a regular here?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Something like that." The waitress gave a tiny bow of respect before hurrying off, and Emma caught it. An odd, deferential gesture. Suspicion prickled at her. When they stepped outside, she finally asked, "So, what do you actually do?" Daniel hesitated. He wanted her to know him, not his bank account. But honesty tugged at him. "I own the cafe. Well, actually, the chain of them." Emma stopped in her tracks, stunned. "You're the CEO?" He nodded slowly, bracing for her reaction. She laughed nervously, shaking her head. "Of course. That explains the suit. And here I was, spending my last $5 just to sit here." Daniel froze. "Your last?" Color rushed to her cheeks. She hadn't meant to admit it. "It's nothing. Just nurse life." But the confession hit him like a punch. This woman had walked into his cafe with her final dollar, and still carried herself with dignity and kindness. He had never met anyone like her. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt humbled. And for Emma, the night had suddenly shifted. She was sitting across from a man whose world was galaxies away from hers. Yet somehow, she felt closer to him than anyone else. Daniel couldn't shake the image of Emma's wrinkled $5 bill. Most women he dated ordered the most expensive thing on the menu without a second thought. But Emma? She stretched her last dollar just to show up. They walked in silence until he finally said, "Emma, why didn't you tell me?" She smiled faintly. "Because I didn't want pity. I just wanted a normal evening. Not a nurse, not broke, just me." Daniel admired her strength. But he also felt a stirring responsibility. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but he wanted to help. "You know," he said carefully, "we're opening a health initiative through the cafes. We'll need consultants, people who understand healthcare from the inside." Emma blinked. "Me? But I'm not just anything," he interrupted gently. "You're exactly who we need." Tears welled in her eyes. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that. Not her bosses, not her peers. She always felt invisible, replaceable. But Daniel saw her. Still, doubt gnawed at her. "I don't want special treatment because of this date." Daniel smiled. "This isn't charity, Emma. It's recognition. You've been giving everything to others. Maybe it's time someone gives back to you." For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope that life could be different. She looked at him, this stranger who had somehow become something more in a single evening, and whispered, "Maybe meeting you wasn't such a mistake after all." Daniel chuckled softly. "No, Emma. Meeting you might be the best thing that's ever happened to me." 2 weeks later, Emma sat in the same cafe, but this time not as a broke nurse clinging to her last $5. She was there for her first meeting with Daniel's team, helping design a wellness program for cafe employees and their families. She still worked as a nurse, but now she had an extra purpose, and a partner who believed in her. As Daniel walked in, carrying 2 coffees, he smiled. "One latte, just the way you like it." She laughed. "As long as it's not my last $5, I'll take it." They both knew that night had changed everything. For Daniel, it was the first time he'd seen past the world of wealth and status and remembered what truly mattered. Kindness, resilience, humanity. For Emma, it was proof that even when life feels impossible, a single choice, a blind date, a last cup of coffee, can lead to something extraordinary. The cafe buzzed with life around them. But for a moment, all Emma saw was Daniel's warm gaze and the quiet promise in it. "You know," she said softly, "I almost didn't come that night, and I almost didn't show up," he replied. "Funny how the best things happen when you least expect them." Emma smiled, her heart full. She had walked into the cafe with nothing but her last $5. But she walked away with something priceless. Love, dignity, and a future brighter than she ever dreamed. And for anyone who felt like they were at their breaking point, Emma's story stood as a reminder. Sometimes, the smallest steps lead to the biggest miracles.